the user what's great about the game and what's interesting. The last thing I guess I should point out is some have gone to now doing videos at the end. Videos show off different types of gameplay and the variety of the game. Did tend to hold participants' attention a bit longer, but it was less effective at telling them, kind of answering the questions that they had. It answered questions in terms of what is the variety of gameplay and what are all the things that I can do. Wasn't as effective as doing, as showing them this is the amount of content, or this is how many levels or how many hours of gameplay that you can expect from this game. That could be easily fixed though, just by adding something to videos. What is the goal of the game?
I still don't know what the objective is of the game. At first I thought it was getting through checkpoints because I got through a couple of them. But now that I'm sort of a bit past it, I'm not quite sure who the end is and what the end is.
This is probably one of the biggest failures that we saw with game demos, and based on my past experience, it's actually something that many games forget to do. This is something that when I was working in my old job, that we would, this would pop up repeatedly when we were doing testing of games. And that's just, many games fail to tell the user what the overall goal of the game is. Again, potential causes, I think we just overestimate. People already know about our game, otherwise why would they be playing it? The other cause is actually comes from the players themselves, and this is something that you have to battle with when doing a demo. They button mash at the beginning to get into the game as fast as they can. So for any marketing or publishing people here who thought that they would solve the end of game demo screen problem by moving it to the front, nah, that won't fix it. It'll just frustrate people. So they just want to jump in. So even popping up things in front of hand and trying to tell them isn't very effective. The other thing is, when you take your game, this great 20-hour experience or whatever it is, and try and chop it down into a 30-minute segment, the big picture tends to get lost. So some recommendations: always clearly state the objective. I cannot stress this enough. Again, in my career, this has been one of the biggest problems that I've seen with failures of games as well as demos. If the user has no idea what they're doing at all, they quickly lose kind of motivation to continue unless they kind of discover something that's going to keep them going. If they have some idea of where they're going and are having troubles doing it, they might persist a little bit longer. So this one is really, to me, the most key thing. Recommend not relying completely on the opening movies. We had about 8 of the 14 sit through one opening movie, and then they did so inconsistently, so they don't always watch them. Timing of the opening movie seems to be key. And this is really informal. I know a lot of things can affect how compelling a movie is and whether people will actually watch it. But it's kind of an informal thing from our testing. We found about a minute and a half, people would watch it, they wouldn't say anything. Give it much longer than that in the movie. If they watched, they would either skip it at about that point, or they'd get to the end and they would say, that was kind of long. The easy way to do this is simply to restate the objectives at the start of gameplay. This doesn't need to be necessarily if you can set the context somehow up front, then when they start the gameplay, you can give them just the little nugget that they need to get going. The other thing, and I'll come back to this later, because I do think that this is important. It's not something that's going to win every time, but placing objectives or helps or hints in the pause menu, especially for demos, because odds are you're not going to be using your pause menu for a whole lot of other things. What tends to happen is the pause menu for the game, which is complex and has to do with controller setups and configuration and all these other options that you might want in the full game, may not apply to the demo. So it's a real opportunity to utilize that, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. And if using a later level for the demo, make sure you give them context in terms of what's happening. Again, this is just an oversight in terms of you grab a later level, it all makes sense to you, and you find out then when someone goes to play it that, oh yeah, they don't know the whole backstory. Just some context. Doesn't need to be the whole story, doesn't need to be every detail. It's really just framing. What is this? Why is this here? What are you doing? A real quick note, because we did look at some games, I'm going to call them free roam, but games like Tony Hawk, what's the last one, the latest one, Project something, and a couple people played Amped 3 because they had played a previous version of Amped, Test Drive Unlimited. There are kind of these, Crackdown was another one, that are these free roam games that you know, the user can just go out and do whatever they want for a while and then discover these other interesting things about the game. Maybe great for a game mechanic, I'm not criticizing that at all, but it didn't work real well as a demo. And the problem is that it required the user to go out and find what was interesting about the game. And that process in a game may be quite interesting and quite exciting if I've prepared for a long experience. But in a short experience, we just found people missed it. Some found none, at most one. Actually, at most it was 2 different things that they might find that was interesting. So Tony Hawk Proving Ground has, you know, like 3 different careers. No one found more than one of them by the time that they quit the demo. And again, I think it's just that they got out, they started moving around, just trying to get a sense of the gameplay. Whatever they stumbled on was kind of what they thought the game was about, and then they moved on. So for these, if you're making these particular types of games, taking a slice of the gameplay and handing it to the user may not be the best way forward. I had to cut content due to time, but if anyone's looked at the Cameo 2 demo, they actually do a kind of good job of saying kind of what would you like to try in our game. And there's, you know, free exploration, fight a boss battle, battle hordes of enemies or something like that. They give the player a little bit of a taste of all the different aspects of the game. There were some issues with that just around giving them context of, you know, is this the way the game's structured or how is the game structured? But it was more effective at helping players understand the variety of content within the game. How do I accomplish my goal? There's 2 levels to this. The first one kind of bleeds onto the overall objective, and that's what in concept do I need to do to accomplish my goal? And then the second one is, okay, I know what I need to do, but how do I go about doing that? In other words, what buttons do I push? So it's a screenshot from Command & Conquer 3, the demo, and you can see here, it did something really well, which when it gave the next objective, it would zoom in and it would highlight, you know, you need to build a barracks here and build 3 riflemen so that the users knew, okay, your player knew, yeah, right here it is. In general, if a game was good at giving the user the overall goal or the player the overall goal of the game, they were usually pretty good at this step. It just tended to be the lack of no goals at all, then it became very problematic. But what buttons do I press was actually more problematic in testing. Some potential issues. Some demos, believe it or not, gave no instruction at all what buttons to press. This blew my mind. I could not believe that this was the case. Again, it's easy to overlook, or if you take a later level, you taught all of that in the first hour of gameplay, and now you pulled a later level and you forgot to put that part in. The other thing is button instructions placed in a tutorial, which when offered a tutorial, I think I've got the number later, but basically not everyone uses or will go to a tutorial. That's pretty consistent again with my past experience testing a variety of games, is that it's somewhere around about half of the people will actually go into a tutorial. Once they're in the tutorial, it all comes down to pacing and how long it gets and how bored they get and how long they'll kind of stick it out. Third problem I talked about, they gave the high-level instruction but not the problem, or not the buttons to press. The other is instructions given at the wrong time, or instructions were given once, but then there was a big delay before the player got a chance to repeat those tasks again, and they just forgot the buttons. So recommendations. The good news is this one's got a really easy fix that everyone loves, or everyone loved in testing. And it's pretty simple.
It's good that it tells you what the buttons are straight up, so you know what buttons, like, I'll automatically know that that's to shoot the gun, so, and grenade, sight, that's the move, yeah.